Welcome to the 2023 Oscar preview show as presented by the Yay, Nay or Meh channel. This is a series of videos where I will be analysing the above-the-line categories at the 2023 Oscars. Even though I've been podcasting and reviewing films for over a decade now, I still consider myself an enthusiastic amateur rather than an expert. I didn't go to film school, I don't really have the training in it. This is the reason why I only do the major categories, because I honestly don't think I can give a value judgment as to what the best editing is, what the best production design is. But I do believe I can give value judgments about the best acting, the best directing, the best writing, and the best film. So that is why I only do the major categories. And I analyse the Oscars in a slightly different way than most people, because I spend almost as much time discussing what I think should have been nominated rather than what was nominated, and only limiting myself to that. And as such, these videos and in past years audio podcasts do get rather long. So what I've decided to do is split these reviews up into separate videos, and there will be one video for each category, where I will be discussing what I think will win, what I think should win, whether there were any snubs, and if there were any snubs, whether I personally think they should actually have won the Oscar. And in a couple of places I've gone really left field with what I think should win the Oscar. So this is going to be a long process. I mean, at the time of recording, it's less than a week away from the actual Oscar ceremony. So I need to be efficient and I need to be fast. And as such, I'm going to be reusing a lot of the same videos. This introduction I'm recording now will be on each of these videos. I mean, I need to introduce each of the videos in case you come across them individually. So I may as well just record one introduction and use it in each of the videos. And if you watch more than one of these, you'll be seeing this a lot. And as such, there will be a time code in the comments to tell you when the actual content starts. And when I will be talking about the same film in different categories, I'll also be reusing that video as well. So you will be seeing some repeats, but again, you can check in the time codes. And with such a vast project, you need a starting point. In certain categories, there is a shortlist. In both the documentary feature and the international feature categories, the Academy publishes a 15-film long list. And in the animated feature category, they publish a list of eligible films. And this year, there were 27 eligible animated features. But other than those categories with a specific list, the starting point that I use is the lists that are published on goldderby.com, which is basically the industry standard for this kind of Oscar preview and prediction. So if a performance or a film was listed on the Gold Derby lists of Oscar potential, there was a chance, however remote, that a performance or a film did have a chance at the Oscars. And that is the list I will be using, with a couple of tweaks which will come up during some of these videos. So that is my starting point, and if it wasn't published on goldderby.com, it's not going to be under consideration. And this has already gone on for far too long, so let's get on with this categories analysis.
Best Director. Nominee.
Todd Field is a director who has, I think, a very good reputation in the critical community, in the art house community, but I don't think until now he's had a huge profile in the general population. In 2001, he made the film In the Bedroom, which got nominated for 5 Oscars, and now nobody remembers it. I mean, has anybody ever spoken about In the Bedroom in the last 10 years? I certainly haven't come across anything like that. 5 years later, he made Little Children, which got quite a bit of critical praise, but was a little bit divisive. And now, 16 years after Little Children, he is back with this film Tar. And in my opinion, Tar is a masterpiece. I think it should win Best Picture, and I think it should also win Best Original Screenplay. Todd Field narrowly misses out in this category of Best Director. But I think this is a masterpiece. This is the kind of film which is going to get analysed over and over and over again for generations and years to come. I love the way that Tar is so minimalist. We get the bare minimum of information we need. Not quite enough dialogue. There's a lot of stuff which is done by body language and expression. There's certain situations where you have an image and you can interpret what will happen. We can infer what will happen, but we don't actually see it. And these techniques, these methods that Todd Field uses are really, really good. And the way that everything is brought together in the powerhouse performance of Cate Blanchett, we see this character, Lydia Tarr, absolutely collapse, and we see the consequences of her actions. And at every point, Todd Field just shows us the briefest glimpse and we move on, the briefest glimpse and we move on. Yet everything is there. And the control, the tension that Todd Field manages to create in this story, I think is very, very impressive. And yes, I think Todd Field as director is fully deserving of this nomination. Narrowly misses the cut for the actual win, but yes, Todd Field for Tar is a definite yay, and he definitely deserves this nomination.
Best Director. Nominee.
Martin McDonagh writes scripts and indeed writes plays which have an unusual blending of the darkly comic, even the absurd, the melancholic, even the tragic, and the wry observational humour. And that's all well and good, but it wouldn't be nearly as effective as it is if it wasn't for the direction of Martin McDonagh as well. In his previous films, In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and now The Banshees of Inisherin, there's always that element of a knowing, winking approach, which doesn't ever tip over the line into parody, at least not in my opinion. Or actually, maybe a little bit in 7 Psychopaths, but certainly in The Banshees of Inisherin, the interactions which Martin McDonagh manages to create with these two characters, Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, the way they play off against each other, the way they just don't understand each other. And then when you also add in the element of Barry Keoghan, the kind of elements of chaos a little bit in this story, the ways that the harshness as well as the humour gets portrayed, and we see in real time almost how these things are being figured out. And yeah, Martin McDonagh manages to bring everything together and makes it work really, really well. So yeah, I think the way that Martin McDonagh world builds is obviously down to his writing, but it's also very much down to his direction, and seeing how everything fits together in something like The Banshees of Inisherin, I think is really, really effective. And I do think Martin McDonagh deserved this Oscar nomination for Best Director. And it is a yay.
Best Director. Nominee.
There are certain directors I just don't get. They have enormous international profile. Everybody says, oh, this is the genius best movie making ever. And I watch the films and I think, no, that's not my thing. And Ruben Östlund is definitely one of those directors. His last 3 films have all won major awards at Cannes, including this one, Triangle of Sadness. And I just don't get it. Maybe it's my personal taste. I mean, Ruben Östlund very often deals with a sense of awkward humour, which is just not my thing. I mean, I've never liked to watch The Office. That kind of cringe humour just doesn't do it for me. So maybe, well, that almost certainly has something to do with it. But even so, I just don't get the praise that Ruben Östlund has. Triangle of Sadness is a film which does have points to make, but it makes them in such a blunt and an obvious way, and in occasionally a grotesque way. I mean, the extended scene where everybody's vomiting. Yeah, really? Yeah, I mean, performances. I mean, yes, Dolly De Leon, the Filipino cleaner, was getting legitimate Oscar buzz for Best Supporting Actress, which I understand. Didn't make my cut. But as a film, as a directing performance, I just don't think this cuts the mustard. It is making relatively vapid, relatively understated points in very flamboyant ways, and I just don't think it works well enough. So, no. In all of the major categories that Triangle of Sadness got nominated in, Best Picture, Best Director for Ruben Östlund, and Best Original Screenplay, again for Ruben Östlund, I just don't think Triangle of Sadness deserves it. And for me, in every category, it is a nay.
Best Director. Nominee.
There is no question that Steven Spielberg is one of, if not the greatest living filmmaker. Certainly one of the greatest living American filmmakers. He has such a monumentally impressive CV, encompassing everything from the very, very serious, like Schindler's List and The Colour Purple, to the very, very silly, like the Indiana Jones movies, particularly the recent Indiana Jones movies. I can't believe in 2023 we're having another Indiana Jones coming out. Let it alone already. But that's another discussion for another time. Steven Spielberg is a great, great filmmaker. And he seems to have added his name to a phenomenon, a current zeitgeist which is going on, of filmmakers making films which were based on, or at least inspired by, their own childhoods. We have Armageddon Time, James Gray, which is very similar to The Fabelmans. We have Richard Linklater, Apollo 10.5, Kenneth Branagh, Belfast, Greta Gerwig in Lady Bird, Paolo Sorrentino, The Hand of God, Alfonso Cuarón, Roma. These are all films where a filmmaker is looking back on their own childhood and making a film about it. And that's fine. That's all well and good. But in this particular case, I just don't think The Fabelmans works. I mean, this is clearly something that Steven Spielberg wanted to get off his chest. This is a very, very personal film for him. Fine. But do we need to see this story? Do we need to know the building blocks that made Steven Spielberg the filmmaker? I'm not sure we do. So, yeah. I think this is kind of an epitaph, maybe even an elegy for Steven Spielberg, and fine, that's fair enough. I just don't think it's a very good film, and I certainly don't think that Steven Spielberg deserves this shout as Best Director. So yeah, I don't think he deserved this nomination. As far as the directing of The Fabelmans goes, I would say it's only a meh. I mean, there's nothing that really wowed me, there's nothing that really stood out for me as I watched The Fabelmans. So yeah, as a directing performance, Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans only ends up being a meh, and I don't think he deserved this Oscar nomination.
Best Director. Snubbed.
The non-English language film that everybody's paying attention to and everybody is heaping praise upon is All Quiet on the Western Front, which is going to win Best International Feature. I mean, there's just not a contest. The non-English language film that everybody should be paying attention to is the Belgian film Close. This is a film directed by Lukas Dhont, whose first film, Girl, also got a lot of international attention. But honestly, I wasn't the hugest fan. Well, I really, really liked Girl until the last few scenes. The final idea that Girl leaves you with, I strongly object to. But he was definitely a director to watch. And then he came out with this film Close, which follows the story of two teenage boys who are transitioning between junior school and senior school. They have grown up together as close as brothers, they're neighbours on a flower farm. Or I think, well, at least one of them owns a flower farm in the French-speaking part of Belgium. And they not only spend the night at each other's house, it's not uncommon to spend entire weekends at the other's house, even sharing the same bed. But when a half curious and half teasing question comes up from one of the girls in their class, are you together? One of the boys, brilliantly played by Eden Dambreen, rejects this idea wholeheartedly and separates himself from his best friend, joins the local ice hockey team, starts hanging out with the boys who play football and discussing endlessly who's better, Kylian Mbappe or Lionel Messi, and completely rejecting his old friend simply because of the suggestion that they might be intimate with each other. And this has consequences, and the end of this film does have its very melancholy moments. And all of this is brilliantly executed by Lukas Dhont. As both director and screenwriter, he manages to fill this film with such subtlety, with such grace. In a year where so much of the discussion, so many of the films have been this maximalist approach, here we have a quiet, intimate film which is so much about body language, so much about silence, but we see everything going on. And honestly, I think Lukas Dhont deserves Oscar nominations in both the Best Director and the Best Original Screenplay categories. I think this is an exceptional piece of work. And Eden Dambreen, this kid, is so impressive. I mean, he was 15 years old or so when he shot this film. And I was just blown away by how good he was. And if you watch more of these videos, you will be hearing more about Eden Dambreen. But yeah, Lukas Dhont as director, as writer, I think deserves Oscar nominations. I think this should win the International Feature Oscar this year, and I also think it should be nominated for Best Picture. I really do think this is the type of film that needs to be more in the discussion when it comes to a Best Picture win. So yeah, for me, Close deserves a boatload of extra Oscar nominations, and it's definitely a yay.
Best Director. Snubbed.
Baz Luhrmann's gonna Baz Luhrmann. In a lot of ways, 2022 was the year of maximalist filmmaking, with Elvis, with Babylon, with Bardo, with RRR. All of these huge, exuberant films. And Elvis was definitely amongst them, as Baz Luhrmann has so often done in the past. I think the world needs people like Baz Luhrmann, and when somebody like that takes on an iconic figure like Elvis, things are going to happen, and they certainly did in the film Elvis. It's very long, it's very epic, it's very experimental. I mean, the filmmaking style itself is very noticeable. But it works. It's huge, it's exuberant, it's wild, it's fun. I think Austin Butler is probably going to win Best Actor, and personally speaking, I think Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker should have got a lot more attention as well. I mean, yes, it's a very flamboyant performance, but I think it's a good performance from Tom Hanks. I can't remember the last time I saw, if I've ever seen, Tom Hanks give a bad performance. But Elvis is vast. It's big. It's big in so many different ways, and it works. And I'm glad that a filmmaker like Baz Luhrmann and a film like Elvis can get so much attention at the Oscars, because, yeah, this is fun. It's epic, it's big, and yeah, I think it deserves its Oscar nomination for Best Picture. So for me, Elvis is a yay.
Best Director. Will win. Should win.
I love the fact that I live in a world where the guys who directed the outrageous and the flamboyant music video for Turn Down for What have a very real chance, even a likelihood, that they're going to win the Oscar for Best Director. Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, collectively known as Daniels, started out in the music video world, in the commercial world, made a reasonably impressive feature film debut with Swiss Army Man, which was weird, but you're kind of good. And now they've come up with this film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is quite something. This very low budget film, which manages to encompass not everything, not only in our world and in our universe, but in other universes as well, encompassing a really mundane, really boring IRS office, a laundromat, a gleaming white cathedral with a giant bagel at one end, a film premiere, a world where people have sausages for fingers. I still don't know how that works. And a scene which is one of the most emotional scenes of the film, and it's two rocks talking to each other using subtitles. Who comes up with this? And who makes it work? I mean, that's the most impressive thing. That all the different elements, all the different things that are going on in this film, and Daniels managed to keep it together, managed to make it all work, managed to make it all very, very impressive. I think this is going to win Best Picture. I mean, it's not going to be my personal choice, but I certainly don't begrudge Everything Everywhere All at Once winning it. I think it would be a very, very worthy winner. And I do think that Daniels deserved the Best Director win as well. I mean, this is maximalist filmmaking, but it's maximalist filmmaking with a heart. For all the fantastical elements, ultimately this is the story about a mother-daughter relationship. And it's all the stronger for it. So yes, I think Everything Everywhere All at Once could have been utter chaos, utterly incomprehensible. But the fact that Daniels managed to make it work, managed to make it not only comprehensible, but also embrace everything in it and make it so heartwarming and so beautiful and all those things. I think it's a monumental achievement of direction, and I do think that Daniels deserve the win for Best Director, and their performance is a yay. In the Best Director category, the nominees are Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Todd Field for Tar, Michael McDonagh for The Banshees of Inisherin, Ruben Östlund for Triangle of Sadness, and Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans. My personal list of nominees would be Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert for Everything Everywhere All at Once, Lukas Dhont for Close, Todd Field for Tar, Baz Luhrmann for Elvis, and Martin McDonagh for The Banshees of Inisherin. I'm pretty sure that who will win the Oscar is Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. And I also think they will deserve to win the Oscar. I don't think there's anybody who can beat them. I mean, possibly, a legacy win for Steven Spielberg, which I hope doesn't happen. But Daniels should win this Oscar, and it would be deserved. And as I leave you with some honourable mentions in this category, which I think are worthy of note, a reminder that I have several more videos in this playlist which analyse different categories at the 2023 Oscars. You can check those out if you desire, even though if you watch enough of them you will have to skip some pieces of footage that I reused, including this closing statement. I am planning to do a reaction video to the Oscars themselves. I haven't quite figured out the technicals of that, but we'll have to see how that goes. And if you appreciate the kinds of things that I'm doing, I have an audio podcast, and I have various other things on this channel that you might want to check out. So you can like, comment, subscribe if you wish. And basically, that's all I have for this particular video. So I'll see you next time, where I shine a light on cinema, both obvious and obscure.